Okay, we are live on YouTube. The meeting is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir. Welcome to the Lyon Township Planning Commission meeting for Monday, February 22nd, 2021. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, very good. Kelly, if you take roll, please.
Patricia Carconi.
Present in Lyon Township, Michigan.
Jim Check.
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Michael Conflitti.
Here, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Bronco Mikowski.
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Ron Pennington.
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Kurt Radke.
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Carl Town.
Here, Lyon Township, Michigan.
All right, very good. Approval of tonight's agenda, please.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll support.
Who's that? Who made the motion? I couldn't tell.
Carl.
Carl. Okay. Support by Mr. Chuck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay. Approval of consent agenda, February 8th, 2021 minutes.
I think Kelly did a marvelous job again. I don't see any changes. If there's no changes, I'd recommend approval.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Town, support by Mr. Chuck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay. Brian, do we have anyone in the waiting room from the public in regards to comments?
No callers right now.
Okay. All right. Very good. And Tina, is she going to be here tonight?
No.
Given a DDA report, doesn't look like it. Okay. Brian, if you'd start us off, new business AP 20-48, GRLLC East Building Site Plan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Per usual, I will share my screen here. You'll note that in your packet, you have two review letters, one dated February 10th and one dated February 18th. From McKenna, I'll flip back and forth between the two. After the first letter was issued, Mr. Clark resubmitted updated plans addressing all of the issues highlighted in our February 10th letter. The east site here is just north and just outside of Quadrants Industrial Park, east of Fleet Services. So the site we're talking about is right here. It has frontage on Grand River. And if you recall the way that the Amazon parking lot was approved, this will be a private driveway just off site. So that's the area that we are dealing with. I will pop the plan up here also. So the plan itself is for a just over 32,000 square foot building. The total site is 10 acres and it's zoned I1 light industrial. So as it's proposed, this is a spec building today, but it's planned with warehousing, manufacturing, and supporting offices in mind. We have all of the ownership information necessary for the plan and an authorization letter from Mr. Zamler authorizing Mr. Clark to act on his behalf. We believe that all of the setbacks and dimensional requirements for the I1 district have been achieved with this plan. The building height that is proposed is 29 feet 4 inches, which is compliant with our 40-foot maximum. Within the packet, you do have a design guideline evaluation that shows that this is a passing building. We think that it does meet all of the requirements for the district. It scores a passing rating from our evaluation as well. The building itself is includes some brick veneer in the office areas, metal paneling on the remainder of the structure, and windows throughout. The loading docks will be on the east side of the building. Hopping back to the plan here. The building is oriented towards the private drive, even though the front yard is Grand River. The loading docks here are on the east side, and you can note from the plan that the township fire truck is capable of turning around in this back area. I believe that there's a letter in the packet from Mr. Holzheimer, the fire marshal, stating his letter of no objection. We also have dumpster screening and the location of the dumpster, which are both shown on the plan on the east side of the site. That is compliant. It has a galvanized pipe frame. It'll have composite boards on the gate. There are no fences. All of the HVAC equipment and transformers, generators will all be rooftop equipment that's screened appropriately. We do have a photometric plan now that does show compliance with the lighting standards of the ordinance. The application and plans show that any signage that is going to be proposed will be submitted at a later date. So that will be an administrative review by the zoning administrator. In terms of the parking required for the site, 38 spaces are required based on the warehousing uses, the manufacturing spaces, and the offices. As we count, we have 59 parking spaces available, 3 of which are barrier-free. So we have no concerns that this project can meet our requirements for parking. In terms of landscaping, I'll hop back to our the site plan as it's proposed here, or I'm sorry, the aerial as it's proposed. Because of this natural, sorry, can't get the right scale. Because of the natural stormwater area and all of the existing tree stand that is located along Grand River, there are no trees proposed along the Grand River frontage. We think that's appropriate with all of these being saved. So we believe that the maintenance of the existing trees can count towards the ordinance requirement. We have no concerns with that being proposed as is. The other landscaping requirements have been met. I do want to note that it's typical in instances where we have parking that would front on a road that we would have a row of parking lot screening. As I note in our letter, I don't think that's appropriate in this instance or required in this instance. This is a private drive. It's not going to be accessed. It's not going to be a public road. So we have no issues with a lack of screening there. In terms of a sidewalk requirement, one of our initial comments was that the sidewalk was not shown on the original plan. These plans have been updated to reflect a sidewalk along the entire frontage of Grand River, meeting our ordinance requirements. As it's presented on the site plan, it will be installed in front of both the west and the east properties. As I've noted in our February 18th letter, all of our concerns are addressed on this project. We feel that it's appropriate. It's an appropriate spec building. The uses that could be contained within this building are permitted within the I-1 district. And we have no outstanding items to be addressed at this point. The only thing that I will note that has that I did not include in this letter is that the land division has yet to be completed. If you recall, during the Amazon approval, there were property line modifications that were required to split the property in the east-west direction here. And for the east property, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, I apologize. For the east property, the boundaries are already in place. For the west property, we will have to address some property lines. So that's all I have. Any comments from the engineer would be added on to that, but I can have any questions or take any questions that the Planning Commission might have.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? No questions. Okay, good. Thanks, sir. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have our report of February 18th. And rather than read it word for word, I think I will just summarize that the site does have access to public water in Grand River Avenue. This will require a bore beneath Grand River. The county will not allow an open cut on that. We note that a water main easement will be required on Unit 4. My report says Unit 5, and that's actually Unit 4. And the applicant will be responsible for obtaining that. Public sewer is available. We have a pump station on the south side of Grand River near Old Plank Road. And we wanted to note that sanitary sewer capital charges will apply to this property. To our knowledge, this was not part of the Zebra agreement. In other words, there are no banked REUs as part of the condominium, at least to our knowledge. That can be investigated further during engineering review, but we do not think this was part of that agreement. Stormwater management is provided. We have a basin on site, and we have received soil boring information from the applicant that indicates the groundwater levels are favorable and he will be able to achieve storage requirements. And access to the site is by way of that private drive that is planned to be constructed with the Amazon 2 project. We would like to note that this site is dependent upon that access drive being improved. And should the Planning Commission choose to approve the site plan this evening, we would suggest that it be conditioned on those improvements being completed to that access drive. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thanks, Rick. Any questions for Rick? Rick, what's the width on that drive? Do you know? I see when Amazon's parking their trucks along there, it takes up quite a bit of space.
Yeah, currently it's, I think it's only about 20 to 24 feet wide. And what is proposed is actually something in the neighborhood of 39 feet, I believe it is. It's going to, or 40 foot wide easement, which is just outside the curb line. But what this means is when it's improved, it'll be one lane north, one lane south, and a center turn lane, a left turn lane, extending that full length.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, this bill.
Yes, William.
I would like to object to Rick's suggestion that the road would have to be complete prior to us starting construction. First of all, Amazon has got more to lose than any of us here by not completing their road, both monetarily and business-wise. But two, we're able to start construction prior to the road being complete without interference with the Amazon work. So we would like not to be tied to the road being completed.
I think, and thanks for speaking up, Bill. I should have been more clear. I would suggest that a condition on site plan approval be worded such that occupancy of the building would not be available until that road is improved. I have no objection to them starting construction on this, Mr. Chairman. But I think, and I believe Mr. Clark is right. Amazon has a lot more to lose in this, but without those improvements in place, I would be reluctant to issue, or if it were up to me, I'd be reluctant to issue any certificate of occupancy. So I think with that clarification, I would be comfortable with that.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Clark
Okay.
again.
Yes.
I'm in total agreement with Rick. We wouldn't intend to ask for occupancy prior to that road being totally complete. Only that we would be able to construct the buildings while the road was under construction.
Okay. All right. Understand. All right. We'll get back to this. Rick, did you have anything else?
No, that's it. That's it, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Okay. Were there any other questions for Rick? Anyone in the commission?
I'm going to hold off on my question.
Okay. Okay. All right. William, if you want to
Chairman,
give Kelly name and address, please. Applicant.
yes,
Yeah, give Kelly name and address. if you
William
would. Just
Clark, 49140 Wixom Tech Drive, Wixom, Michigan.
Okay, very good. All right.
And then,
Did you have anything to add to
may
what
I
we heard tonight?
please, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Rick had mentioned needing a water main easement on Unit 4. That's a non-issue since we also own Unit 4. So we're just providing an easement from ourselves to take care of the 32,000-foot building. As far as the REUs go, we're likely going to purchase some from Todd Wyatt as long as the township is in agreement from the ZEB REU fund that they have, the reserve. If that's acceptable, if not, we'll be more than happy to buy them direct from the township.
And I don't think I can answer that right now without checking as to our responsibilities with Lion Wastewater. So.
Yeah, and I'm not sure either, Carol. And I'm sure all of you know my relationship with Todd Wyatt. We've been partners in many land deals for many years. So we work together. And I'd like to comment to one thing on Brian about the property having being split, right, or rezoned, or not rezoned, but I guess split would be the proper word. That's all in progress somewhere, Mr. Chairman. The easements have been written. The legal descriptions have been written. So I'd have to follow up to give you an answer, but I know it's somewhere in the system.
Okay.
So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Carol, anything you heard would prohibit us from going forward?
No.
Okay.
But I do agree with the condition though, that they could not occupy the building until the road is constructed and finished.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Al, did you have anything to add?
No, this is Al Valentine at GAV 24001 Orchard Lake, Farmington. Nothing much to add. My part was fairly easy, and I appreciate that. Not too many things had to be changed or updated. So I'm not much to say with this one.
Okay, very good. Back to the commission. Does anyone have any questions for the applicants? Carl.
Yeah. Bill, on your tenant, it's kind of just a learning curve for me. Number one, do you have anybody in mind? And number two, why that building size is because you got enough parking and it sits on that site real well? Is that why you went with that size of building?
That's what dictated it.
Okay.
And currently there's a hole in the market for 30 to 40,000 foot buildings. So
Okay.
it's good, but we could not build anything larger there and comply with all the setbacks and things that are required of us.
No. My next would be just some thoughts is that the natural environment out on front end Grand River for the landscaping works real well. I like it a lot. It's, breaks things up on Grand River. So I really like that a lot. Again, let's see, we already discussed the access drive which works out really well. We've done that in the past with the occupancy. So, forgive the occupancy on that until it's completed. I'm really good with that. So I don't see any reason to hold this up tonight. It would have my approval.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a
Mr.
motion.
All right, very good.
I'll make a motion AP-20-48 be recommended, moved forward based on the information provided in the letter from McKenna dated the 18th of February 2021, as well as the CES letter dated 2/18/2021, contingent upon the improvements to the private access road as noted before C of O is granted.
I had one other thing. I don't know, Carol, but in the application, the crossing of the wetlands for the sanitary sewer has to have a DEQ permit. So should we put that in the motion as well, or does it suffice with I think it was in McKenna's letter?
Yeah, I think it's sufficient the way the motion has been stated to cover that.
Okay, thank you. I support.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Any other comments? Motion by Mr. Chuck, support by Mr. Town. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, very good. Excellent. Brian, next, AP 20-49. GRLLC West Building Site Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our letters are dated the same as the East application, February 10th, and reissue on February 18th for a similar purpose. I will skip over some of the ownership information. One of the big things to consider, this is a 108,000 square foot building. I'm sorry, 108,000 square foot building on a 22-acre site. One of the things that I had missed in my initial review was the fact that the site could have been within the wellhead protection area. Mr. Clark has since clarified that it is, and so we were able to get a special land use notice for your next planning commission meeting. So it's been confirmed that the site is in the wellhead overlay district. I do want to talk about the site plan this evening. I think it's appropriate in case there's anything specific that the planning commission believes need to be addressed. But it would be appropriate for you to withhold making any decision on this until we have the public hearing at your next meeting. So keep that in mind, please, if you will. In terms of the setback and dimensions, the building meets all of our dimensional requirements. We have no concerns with its placement, with its setback off of the conservation easement, with its location given the access off of the private drive, all is appropriate. Our lot coverages and building heights for the proposed structure are achieved. This is a one-story building with a height of 33 feet. Similar to the east building, the architectural evaluation scores passing, and the office spaces are facing the private road. Dumpster screening and HVAC location are all appropriate. The photometric plan has been provided and shows compliance with our ordinance standards. All of the parking and circulation requirements of the ordinance have been achieved as well. The site requires 134 spaces, and significantly more than that at 261 are provided on the site. So we have no concerns there. Again, this is split in some form or fashion between manufacturing and warehousing uses for the majority of it, in addition to those office spaces. So as it's designed, the loading docks are on the west side of the building here and will be screened by that conservation easement between Grand River and the building. Our same comments apply for landscaping. The property is heavily landscaped or has heavy existing vegetation and the wetland in the conservation area. We think it's appropriate to waive the requirements along Grand River. As mentioned before, the sidewalk that is required of all of our industrial developments is shown on the site plan as well. So we have no concerns with that particular item. That being said, all of our initial comments have been addressed. As noted in our February 18th review, we think the plan is appropriate and can accommodate permitted or special land uses. So with that, unless the Planning Commission has any specific directives for the applicant, we are on board with this plan. But again, I'll reiterate that we think it's appropriate to withhold any action on this until the public hearing for the special land use at your next meeting.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian? No questions. Okay, thank you, sir. Rick Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Similar to the east building, we have a report that is almost a mirror image dated February 18th, 2021. And as we've discussed, water and sewer are available to this property. He has provided the necessary stormwater storage for his development. And we have discussed access to the site. It's by way of that private drive, and I would recommend anything that's done tonight would be conditioned just like we did with the east building, that no occupancies, although I don't think you're going to take action tonight. And I wanted to mention that a traffic impact study was submitted, and we have forwarded that off to the county for their review. The subject property falls within the wellhead protection boundary. And we also wanted to mention again that we don't think that this property is part of any banked REUs, and it would be subject to the sanitary sewer capital charges, excuse me. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, thanks, Rick. Any questions for Rick?
I'll hold off.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Applicant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe I have any comments.
Okay. All right, very good. How about Mr. Valentine?
No, I'm good too. It's same as the first one.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Back to the commission. We're not going to, sounds like, make any moves on this tonight, but did anyone have questions for the applicant or suggestions?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Please.
I'd like to know about an end user on this as well. Not so much on the first east side, but the west side with being in a wellhead protection area. I'd like to have an idea who's going to go in there, what kind of manufacturing is going to be done. A little bit more intense than what's going to go on tonight. It is in our wellhead protection area. I'd like to see a aerial in our package that shows everything, I think, to the south, what it would impact. Those are my comments.
Okay, all right, that's good suggestion. Okay. Brian, when's the public hearing? This is the next meeting, correct?
Yes, the date is March 8th.
Okay, all right. Anyone else on the commission? Any questions or comments? It's very quiet tonight.
How about a
Okay.
motion to postpone to the March 8th meeting?
Postpone or tabled?
Just move to postpone it to March 8th.
I will make a motion AP-20-49A be postponed until the March 8th meeting. Based on the information presented this evening.
Okay. Mr. Chuck, support by, who is that? Mr. Town?
Mr. Radke.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Radke. All right.
That was an honor, by the way, though. That you thought I was Mr. Town.
Yeah.
You are so funny. Mr. Florida.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? All right, very good.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission, we thank you too, and we'll see you on March 8th.
See you in a
You're
couple
welcome.
weeks.
Bill.
Okay,
All
all right, thanks.
Sounds like a plan.
Brian, you're up. Master plan.
Well, that went very fast. So I've got what, like an hour?
No.
No, you have
Right.
20,
Oh,
you have
Just like,
19
You
minutes.
have until 8:07, okay?
just like every other applicant, 20-minute maximum.
There we go.
Unless it's Dandy Acres, then we'll extend it.
Oh, man.
Okay, so I appreciate you playing along this evening. I wanted to give you an update. We've been doing our background information and formulating a plan for the master plan update. Sometime during the summer, we were approved by the township board to work on this project. And we've got, we had a year timeline set up for that project. So we have been working in the background. We wanted to give you an update as to where we're at, what we're going to be needing from the Planning Commission moving forward, and the direction that I feel is appropriate for this update. So in terms of, let's see here, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on our demographic trends. So the Census Bureau won't be delivering total population counts until April 31st. So for the time being, we're using the ACS estimates, which show that in 2019, the township was all the way up at 19,000 residents. Your largest gains were in the 10 to 14 year range. So you've got a lot of, what that indicates to us is you've got a lot of young families moving in, which we knew about. That's not really a surprise. You've also had an increase in retirees. So you've got young families and you've got folks that are either empty nesters or are moving into the later stages in life. So we've known about those things, at least anecdotally, and all of the projects that get proposed to you are kind of indicating this. And so the data does back that up in at least in total population. And so I think that our goals and objectives and some of the implementation items that we need to address moving forward will revolve around providing living options for these groups. We've had a couple of senior living facilities proposed so far, and we haven't found the right location for those. I think that should be a renewed focus, and we'll probably have some goals coming along that vein. Perhaps not surprising, but very interesting in terms of volume. You've added over the last 8 years or so, we've added 1,700 new homes, which is a 33% increase. It's not surprising that this is moving quickly. What is surprising about that is the sheer number of those structures that are single family houses. So 1,600 of those 1,700 are single family housing units, which is pretty impressive. I mean, that's a huge percentage of your new construction going towards single family housing. I'll say that is kind of out of the norm from the other communities that not only I represent, but the rest of our firm represents. It's much more typical that we'd have a larger percentage of apartment complexes and things like that. We will see a change once Watermark comes in, and perhaps some of the other pre-applications that we've had from a staff perspective have revolved around townhomes and apartment complexes in the New Hudson area. So that may be shifting, but the large majority of our development is single family. I wanted to touch on home values a little bit. So these are ACS estimates, of course, but out of those 1,600 new single family homes, approximately just under 1,500 of them are priced in the 300 to 500,000 range. So we're not getting a lot of variety in terms of the homes that are being constructed. I guess I'd be looking for some direction from the Planning Commission if this is a trend that we want to continue, or if we are open to some alternative housing types, housing markets. You know, things like, or developments like estates at Hutsfield are on the lower end of this spectrum. I don't remember if they even get into the upper 200s, but they're definitely in the 300,000 range. So in terms of affording a new home in Lyon Township, you're not going to get a lot of newly married couples. This ties back to the number of our residents, our population growth. So our population growth of those tweens, which is 10 to 14-year-olds, if you think about the general life cycle, those are 40 to 45 to 50-year-old parents that are moving into the township with those incomes. You're not getting brand new families attracting, or Lyon Township is not attracting brand new families. Whether or not that's important to you, I guess I'd like to get some feedback as we go through this process. Okay, so I'll take a second and stop on that. Is there anything that the Planning Commission would like to comment on that or go back to a little bit more? We've got a lot more in-depth analysis that will actually get included in the plan. I wanted to give you a very brief overview of where those demographic trends are so far.
Anyone? I don't know if we have the attractions for younger families as far as nightlife in this area. I don't know if that would, just having homes in the 200,000 range would be enough to attract that group of people. Do you feel that? Or, I mean, we don't have the restaurants, bars. I mean, we have a few, but do you see this as a destination point for these people?
That's a hard question for me to answer. I don't know the answer to that. I think that there's a variety of factors. I mean, housing value or housing cost is just one. You know, it could be, we could work on things like programming and providing recreational opportunities and all those sorts of things that can help incentivize moving this direction also. So,
Well, Brian,
Mhm.
remember I told you that what our auditors, or not auditors, our assessors have always said? They feel that Lyon Township is considered the sweet spot in Oakland County because of our location. We have, several parks. We have the county park. We have the state park. We have our own local parks. And our location enables you to travel almost anywhere you want to go. So you can get on 96, 23, 14, 275. I mean, you can zip up to Lansing, over to Grand Rapids. I mean, we're in this really unique spot as far as, and you're right between two major colleges, U of M and MSU. And I mean, there's so many more. I could probably go on and on and on to tell you that our location is quite unique. And also, even if we don't have the small town feel for our township, we're surrounded by quite a few successful small towns like Northville, Milford, Plymouth. So just, I think that's what makes us so attractive. And I mean, the city of South Lyon, they're really doing well and trying to, get their little town going, and their downtown is really improving, and that's just a benefit for us. So those are things to think of and we do have tons of recreation. Maybe we don't have a recreation center, but again, all around us, there are places to go. So we have good bike trails.
I was just going to mention that, Patty, because you have trail access in New Hudson.
It does, and you can go far on that. Yeah. So, and plus, if you think about it, we are again near a mall. I mean, really, we have Novi. You can zip to Ann Arbor. We're just in really such a great spot that I think we're fortunate. And our housing values are just going crazy. It's a good place to be. And I always feel lucky to live in this township. So, and we have a major artery too. I mean, we have Grand River, which can take you to a lot of places. So it's just food for thought.
For sure.
I for sure can sell this township.
Well, I don't think you need to. I think that's what your point is.
That's exactly right.
People who have come here so far have found it to be the place for them. So that's good.
I think so.
Okay, I'll keep moving. We are working on the existing land use map update. We are also working on a couple other map updates. I will flash those up on the screen for you. So we've got traffic counts. You'll have to forgive me. These are not in PDF form. These are in active analysis form right now, but we have all the traffic count updates we intend to put into the plan. We've got all the updated floodplains and wetlands that we have access to. Rick, I may need to talk to you and Leslie about incorporating the Wallbridge study in terms of the floodplain to get that shown on the master plan. So don't let me forget to get with you on that.
Got it.
We also have things like intersection traffic accident data from SEMCOG over the years, which is a fun piece of data. I don't know that we will end up including it, but it is kind of interesting. All of their data is split up by the date of the accident, how many occupants, where the offenders, if you will, are from. So it's kind of cool to play with this information. I don't know that I'll include it, but we'll see. So we are working on those map updates. And then the thing that I really want to transition to is I want to show you what my intended focus for the updated master plan is in terms of the content. So one of the things that we continue to run into in our special land use considerations, in any cases that are brought against the township, in our regular conversations with developers, is how is your proposed use really fitting into the fabric of land use within the township today? And is it appropriate? Is it a right fit? And so we are working towards this concept of a compatibility matrix. So today, when we get something like a rezoning application, we are strictly, in terms of referencing the master plan, we have a whole lot of goals and objectives that are in the master plan. We have the future land use plan. We have the ordinance regulations, all of which help guide us towards a decision. I think that there's a little bit of a gap in terms of what the future land use plan shows and how we can actually translate that into the built environment. And so what we're looking to do is give the township another tool to bridge that gap. And so what we've done is prepared a matrix, and you'll see it's pretty visual. We've got green means that our existing and proposed uses match up. Yellow means that there could be some potential issues, and red being these are completely incompatible uses. And then we're also going to try to define what conflict categories could be present in those. So today we've got things like building scale, site design and density issues, traffic issues, or operational. You know, we don't want to end up with loading docks next to a residential property. So what that'll look like in practice is something along this line. And this is ugly today, admittedly, so please forgive that. But we want to give you a tool that says, okay, here's our existing use. Here are our proposed uses on the left-hand side. And at the intersection of those, is this a good fit? And if it's green, in general, that's going to be a good fit. We might note that there are some building and scale or density concerns. But in general, we think that they'd be a good fit. You've got orange, that means we should really take a closer look and be cautious about locating these uses next to each other. And then red gives you a pretty good indication. In this case, we don't want, where there's existing single family housing, we don't want industrial due to operational concerns and traffic and building scale and design. This won't be an end all be all sort of tool, but it is going to be a tool to guide our discussions. I'll show you that the way that we intend this to work, using the Greystone neighborhood as a key or as a recent example. So this is a vacant piece of property that you just recommended for final approval for a single family development. To the north, you've got vacant. To the west, you've got large lot single family. To the east is vacant. To the south is Estates at Hudsfield. And to the south, this should be southeast, is the mobile home park. And the way that we look at this is we would say, okay, to the north is green. It's if we're changing this to single family residential, the property to the north is vacant, green, no issues there. To the east, green, no issues there. To the southeast, we may have some yellow or potential issues, but we're not anticipating any issues in any of the surrounding properties. And so based on this matrix, this would be a good fit. Just so happens that this aligns with our future land use plan, and we were able to come to that conclusion on our own. But in more controversial projects, this matrix, I think, is going to help us out a lot. So before I move on, are there any comments on that? I know I'm not giving you much time to soak this in, but initial impressions based on that tool? Would this be something that you would find helpful as we're going through a review, especially as we apply to special land uses or rezoning applications?
Yes. I like it. I think it's easier to understand, and I like the way it's laid out, Brian.
Okay, good.
This is Kurt, Brian. I'm a visual guy and I like it too. It's just easier to get a high level, see where the problem areas are, if there are any.
Okay, that's good to hear. We will make it pretty. It won't look like this. But I do think that something that could come out of this in terms of a recommendation in the plan would be incorporating or requesting that applicants fill out this matrix as they're going through a special land use application or through a rezoning application, so that they know it's just another piece of information, right? For everybody to be on the same page. They're going to know in advance where they're weak, where they've got to address potential incompatibilities. And from the township perspective, it gives us some ammo to say, hey, no, this really doesn't, even though maybe the future land use map indicates that it could work, it really doesn't for this particular site. And I think that'll help us out in the long run. Okay, so we've got a couple next steps that we're going to be asking the Planning Commission to get involved in. I'd like to know if you would like to see the maps and analysis placed online. We can put those things in a pretty easy to use and digest website that we could embed into the township's website. So I'm assuming I'm not going to get a lot of pushback from the Planning Commission in terms of communicating this information as we're preparing it. Any thoughts on that?
Are you talking about as you do the draft maps, you'll put them online?
Yes.
Okay, you and I should probably talk afterward. We may need some kind of language on it, disclaimer type language that it's not set in stone yet.
Okay, sure.
I like the idea. This is Kurt.
Okay. My next question would be, do we want a general amount of feedback from the public? And a lot of our engagement efforts and a lot of communities want a forum that their residents can provide feedback on. We can do this in the form of an online survey, a paper survey. We could do some focused outreach. We can allow for some public feedback at your Planning Commission meetings. Looking back at the recent master plans, it doesn't look like you've done a lot of engagement. The Planning Commission and the subcommittees have done a lot of the heavy lifting. Is that true in the past?
I think we got a lot of feedback from our past master plans, and I believe that we should have as much feedback as possible from the GP. My next question would be, or my question to you would be, are we looking at the end of the year to wrap this up?
I hope this summer.
That's a pretty tight timeline for doing Zoom meetings and being able to have forums to discuss this in depth. I would not want to move fast on this. That's my opinion.
I can get on board with that. I know that the township board wanted to get this done in a fairly quick manner, and we took our time getting started or getting to this point. So we are a bit farther behind than I think I anticipated being, but but I certainly don't want to rush you. And I think that the things like goals and objectives bear a lot of discussion, especially by the Planning Commission. So I can get on board with that, Carl.
Yeah, and I don't,
Yeah.
and I'm not criticizing anybody for wanting to speed it up. It just makes it very difficult with these Zoom meetings. I anticipate us getting back hopefully sooner than later in live, in person, but we've got a lot of feedback in the past years with our master plans from the public, from Joe Public. And it's nice to hear that input and be able to respond to it as well. Now, whether we can do it live or on a separate forum where we can actually come back as a planning commission and review those questions that the general public brought up, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with Carl to the extent, we hear about transparency and feedback. So I would agree, the public, in most ways, the more the merrier, and we take it under advisement.
Brian, do you have specific areas that you've zeroed in on in the township that, I don't say problems, but areas that, well, for example, 10 Mile Milford Road, we've gone back and forth on some property there, but are there specific areas you're looking at that are going to be more involved than others?
There are some areas that jump out at me when I look at the future land use map that we should really be taking a look at, or at least maybe it doesn't bear a ton of public input, but it does require discussion on our part as to what the appropriate change is going to be. But those are pretty apparent just based on even some of the applications that you as the township have reviewed recently. Things like Coyote, things like Irwin's. I mean, these are pretty, you're getting applications on these and nobody's gotten it right so far from the applicant standpoint. And so those are areas we want to look at again. Even if we don't change what the future land use designation area is, we should look at those again. But we do have a few locations where it's pretty apparent that we should be changing the future land use designation. And we can get into those specific ones as we move along here. I guess to that same end would be my next bullet point, is reviewing and refining all of our goals and objectives. That's really where I think I would like to see the public provide their input. And we could do that in a meeting like this. If we have a quiet agenda, we could go through and literally pick and choose some of these goals and objectives that might be out of date, don't make sense anymore based on our development patterns since 2015, how we're addressing certain problem areas. That's where I think the public input can really help us out and help us determine some of the implementation items that we might want to include in the updated plan.
I think that's a good approach, Brian.
Brian, I think it's a great approach too. Is there any way that we could maybe look at getting Southline East High School auditorium for a couple of these reviews during the COVID? I mean, I don't know what the exact amount is. It's probably 300 now in a so many seated arena. You would have to check on that, but I think that we could go to something like that with COVID restrictions, and I think it would be very beneficial. And I think to have, I don't care if it's a cram session, just to feed the BS for a couple times so we can really get a grip on what the public feels, and we know that we engage them. And we can engage them in that setting. I think that would work really well. Now, I don't know if we can make that happen, but that's what I just thought of. That's all. I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, I'm not sure right now whether we could do that. But, you know, there are some pluses to the Zoom because there are people still that would prefer not to go out around a bunch of people they don't know. So I think at least we have the ability to do the Zoom as well, which is something we didn't have before. Probably a combination, you know.
Oh, no, exactly. But I think it'd be nice to have a couple of nights where we could invite the public in. Absolutely. And then the ones that don't, like you said, a combination of the ones that don't want to be around people or, you know, that are older or whatever, compromised immune system, would do it over the Zoom. I mean, I agree with you 100% on that. A combination, not just the one.
Okay, good.
I agree
Okay,
with everything that's been said. All great ideas. This is Kurt.
What else, Brian?
Okay, just the last couple items I have here. Once we have all the goals and objectives pinned down, then we would move on to implementation goals. And I've got one example here. So if we want to improve our transitions between land uses, we should state how we're going to do this. So whether that's implementing a zoning ordinance change, preparing streetscape designs, or actually funding some of the streetscape designs that have been done in New Hudson already. Those are the kind of implementation items that we'd want to include. And then finally, we've got the adoption process. So we mentioned the discussion and direction that the Planning Commission wants to have. We'll include the public input into those discussions. You've got a required public hearing. We've got a comment period of 42 days for this plan. Then you'd have a recommendation for adoption, and the township board recognizes that updated plan. So it's kind of what we're looking at over the coming months. My hope is to try to front load your first meeting of the month with applicants and application type things, and reserve your second meeting of the month for master plan things, and any, if we have to address any ordinance items or things like that, we would do it during the second meeting. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what I've got for you this evening, and I'm mighty close to
The time you called, yeah. You guys, you
Funny how that
controlled
works.
that nicely, Brian. Hey, I do have a quick question for Brian and Carol, I guess. Is there such a thing as where we could have a supplemental meeting devoted strictly to the planning, the master plan?
Sure.
I mean, how would that work? Would we obviously have to post it, but is that something that could be explored?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which, I'm only speaking for me, but
Because you don't have enough meetings?
I got too many now. I'm trying to reduce them. However, sometimes, a topic such as important as this can almost be a standalone meeting. That's why I brought it up. Yeah, I go to enough already, Carol. I'm trying to reduce them, actually.
No, that's always possible.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Brian. Anything else, or that covers it?
No, I appreciate the feedback and the comments on how you want to gather the public input is good. That'll give me a direction, and I'll try to bring back a plan to you. And to Jim's point, maybe at the next meeting, we could talk about when an appropriate date is to notice for a public engagement session.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Patricia, what do you have for us?
Well, I don't really have anything. There wasn't much to say tonight because it was everything was so straightforward.
Yeah.
So I gave my report last month, and really we've been busy with meetings and probably making Carol crazy, but Brian, just a lot going on.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
You still have 2 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, talk real slow.
Okay, so I'll add something.
Okay.
This is something for Brian to think about too. There's kind of this movement toward almost getting 100% lineup between your zoning ordinance and your master plan, your zoning classifications and your master plan. There's a real push out there for things to be that way. And I think while we're going through this master plan update, we should keep that in mind. So that we're not, if things do move forward, we're not stuck going through now and rezoning a bunch of properties or things like that. So I think you know what I'm talking about, Brian, but this is the right time to address it.
I do. It just depends on how much we want to fight.
Yeah, I know. Okay, that was it. That will have us adjourning right around 8:07, folks.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that in 30 seconds we adjourn.
Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? All right, good job.
Tax
Good night,
review
everyone.
board's right around the corner. Come
Yay.
see me.
Good night, everybody.
Hi.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Brian.
Thank you, everyone.
You bet.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
I love it.